Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Bosher, and today I want to show you guys how to make a steezy, choir-like pad using the Thor synthesizer in Reason. The track that you guys just heard was something I just made for this tutorial real quick, but I want to show you guys how to make those thick, lush choir pads from scratch, so let's get started. I do have a new project already opened up here, and for time's sake I did copy and paste the notes from the previous project over to here as well. And in my rack, I do have a combinator already created. So just right click in your rack and create a combinator. And in the combinator, let's create our first instance of Thor. Click to show the programmer and make sure to right click on it and reset the device or initialize patch depending on what version of Reason you're using. Now when it comes to the polyphony section up top here, this is completely up to preference. If you want to have thick, complex chords, you should aim for higher numbers, but if you're not doing anything too complex, you can have lower numbers. Completely up to you. There are no right or wrong answers for this. For this tutorial, I'm just going to set it to 8 and 8. That way, if I want to stack 8 notes on top of each other, I can. Let's go to the first oscillator section here, and let's change the analog oscillator to a wavetable oscillator. Set the octave to 3, and change the table to voice instead of basic analog. Now, on the position knob here, hold shift, click and drag, and set this to about 44. That way you can get the exact number that you want. Now, when it comes to the low pass filter here, or just the first filter in general, I'm going to bypass this. I don't even need it. I don't need any filters for this particular type of sound, but I would recommend one later on, but we'll get to that later. Now, when it comes to the filter envelope, we're not going to be using this either, so I'm just going to deactivate the gate triggering from this so it doesn't affect anything. And in the amp envelope section, I'm going to set the decay and sustain all the way up so I don't lose any volume over time when I sustain these notes. But again, that is completely up to preference. However you like to do it, that's the way to do it. I like to set the attack and the release up a little higher, that way the note won't click when it activates or releases. Now, if we took a listen to it the way it is, it would not sound anything what we want it to, but let's hear it out. So it doesn't sound anything like what we're trying to achieve, but we'll get there. So the first step to get that thick choral sound is, let's go to the Modulation Matrix here, go to the first source box, and let's go to voice key. What we're going to do is we're basically going to tell the Thor wherever the note is on the piano roll, it'll dictate where the position is on the wavetable oscillator. So if we go voice key, note, full range, and we're going to do this minus 100. And we're going to set the destination to oscillator 1's position. And now what we're going to do is we're going to double that effect. So we're going to do the same thing twice here. So key note, minus 100 to oscillator 1's position. And we'll have two different instances of that happening on top of each other. Now, the next thing I like to do is create a nice vibrato on the pitch of the oscillator, and we can achieve that through the LFO. In all reality, if you just left it alone the way it is by default at 2.69 Hertz for its rate, you would get a nice vibrato effect, so let's just keep it that way. We can set the waveform to a nice little triangular waveform instead of a sine to give it a little more character. And to get that vibrato, let's set the LFO 1's to about 16 to oscillator 1's pitch through the modulation matrix here. And again, we're going to somewhat double this vibrato effect on top of itself by setting LFO 1 on the fourth box here to about 10. And then we'll make it oscillator 1's pitch once again. Now, if we took a listen to it, it's still not going to sound much like what we want it to. We still have a few things to do, but let's take a listen. As you can hear, you can start hearing some voices instead of just some random synthesized sound. So The next thing I would recommend, and this is not necessary, is to go to the third filter section here, make a state variable filter, and set it to high pass 12 mode. We're basically going to cut out all those low muddy frequencies so that way we can have whatever kick drum or whatever bass element underneath. So make sure to just completely set all these knobs to 0, the envelope amount, the velocity, and the keyboard tracking, and then set the frequency to about 472 Hertz. That way we still have the mid frequencies, but we're starting to cut out the lower frequencies from here. Set the resonance to about 10 just to give it a very, very minor peak at that frequency. And let's take a listen to it now. As you can hear, it's a little thinner because we're filtering out those lower frequencies, but we're going to fill that out with a reverb. So let's right click on the Thor here, and let's create a RV7000 reverb. Now, depending on the dry-wet knob here and the algorithm, you can achieve some amazing results. I'm going to keep everything default, the algorithm hall, the size, everything default, and I'm going to make the dry-wet at about 101. And again, this is completely up to preference. So let's take a listen to it now. And even with just a reverb, you start to hear a nice chorused sound, and you can start making it your own very quickly. A couple of things I would recommend on this is to create a unison as well to give it a little bit of more width, and basically stack the synthesizer on top of itself to give a little bit of a chorus effect. You can achieve that with a chorus, but you can also achieve it with a unison. So let's create a unison on it as well, if we can find it. And the dry wet, we'll actually turn this down quite a bit to about 20. You can leave the detune at 40, and you can leave the voice count at 16. And then the last thing I would recommend is messing with either a DDL delay or any other rack extension delay that you have, or the one in Thor here. Turn down the dry wet, and let's take a listen to it with a delay, a unison, and a reverb. And as you can hear, just through a few effects and one oscillator, you can really start achieving some cool, lush, chorused sounds with the Thor. Now, if you want to make the sound a little thicker, and again, completely up to preference, you can go to the mixer section here in the Thor and set oscillator 1 balance to 0, so it's only playing the first oscillator, and it will increase the volume of it as such here. And so there it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is the finished patch of the Wavetable chorus, and what I'm going to do is I'll save this ABB Wavetable chorus tutorial, and I will make it available to you guys to download and mess with and make it your own. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and hopefully learning something. We're all students in this, so please, any comments, feedback, concerns, I'd love to hear it. So thank you so much for watching, and I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.